We're live, en vivo y en color. ¿Qué tal? Muy buenas noches, ¿cómo están? Yo soy Mae, Event Manager aquí de KeepCoding, saludando desde España, Madrid. En color. ¿Qué tal? Muy buenas noches. Oh, Dios, estoy teniendo ahí como repetición por acá, para que miren que estamos viendo aquí el vídeo, ¿no? Ok. Uy. Pues, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están? Espero que todo súper bien. Gracias desde ya por estarnos acompañando. Y hoy tenemos una entrevista muy linda, muy especial, que hemos estado coordinando hace meses atrás. Es con Rena Merchant. Es una chica espectacular. Hoy vamos a hablar del poder femenino en la tecnología y también, obviamente, de las tendencias de UX. Así que, como ya saben, lo hemos puesto en las diferentes plataformas, tanto en Eventbrite, como también en YouTube, también en Facebook y también en Meetup. Hemos dicho que este webinar va a ser al 100% en inglés. Igual, si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta en español, me la pueden pasar por acá, aquí la traducimos y listo. Ahí vamos a hacer un Spanglish muy, muy divertido. Pues desde ya quiero dar la cordial bienvenida a Rena. Rena, how are you? Good night from Madrid. Good morning in Silicon Valley, right?
Yes, in Silicon Valley. I hope you guys are having a great evening over there, and thank you for having me.
Yay, Rena. How are you? Are you good?
I'm doing wonderful. I've been really excited for this and to chat with you and the others today. Looking forward to it.
Yay. Rena, right now, tell us, where are you right now? Where are you right
now? I'm actually at work. So I'm at the YouTube office. We have our YouTube headquarters in Silicon Valley in San Bruno. We have a few different buildings here, and this is the building that I work in. And I'm in a lovely little meeting room where we can have some privacy for our chat today.
Oh, awesome. Okay, guys, so if you got questions, you can do it right now on our chat, on YouTube chat. Also, you can go in our platform that we got the Chatango right now, like saying hello. So we can make a lot of questions to Rena, and also saying hi wherever you are right now. So Rena, shall we, right?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. So Rena, tell us more about you. How old are you?
I am 38. I just turned 38 in January.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're from Silicon Valley, or where you come from?
So I'm originally Canadian. I'm from Toronto, Canada.
Oh.
I was born and raised there. I grew up there. So I actually spent most of my academic career, as well as a lot of my my work life, in Toronto. And then I moved to California 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago. I used to live in Southern California, so closer to LA. I lived there for about 3 or 4 years, and it's been 4 years since I moved to San Francisco. And I miss home. I miss Canada, but I love it here. California is a wonderful place to be.
Why did you move to California? About studies? Tell us more about it.
It was honestly for a work opportunity. So I think I was always looking to Silicon Valley, where, you know, it's just such an incredible design community, and just California in general is such an innovation center. And so being in tech and being in UX, I think I was always intrigued and always thinking, maybe one day I'll move out. And I was very fortunate, and I'm grateful that I had a work opportunity that materialized. And so that's what brought me to California from Toronto.
Where did you study? Which university?
It was the University of Toronto. So that's where I did my undergraduate, so my bachelor's degree. And then I spent some years working, and then I went to design school for a couple of years in Toronto as well. And then after some time, I decided to do a master's degree. So actually, I did an MBA in design strategy more recently in San Francisco.
Great. So I was like looking your LinkedIn, and I love your whole all the things that you have done in your career. But I want to know more, how do you feel to work in a huge company like Google with YouTube, actually?
Yeah, it's really exciting. You know, I didn't know what to expect coming in. I'd heard so many great things about Google, and I knew it was a very large company. Obviously, you know, we all kind of see that from the outside. I didn't really know what to expect. I was just really excited. And then since starting at Google, I've been here for about a year and 4 months now, so a little over a year. I've loved it. I mean, I think it to this day, it's hard for me to wrap my head around the scale of things at Google, just how big the company is, how many users each of its products have. So for example, for YouTube, it's billions of users worldwide. And so sometimes I still kind of have to step back and I'm still blown away by that. But it's really exciting being able to work on a product that has so much impact on so many users, people's lives. So I love it.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get started with the UX questions.
Yeah.
How did you start in the UX world?
So it's interesting. When I was younger, when I was in high school, I always had an interest in the arts, in visual arts and design. And I remember, you know, I was at that stage after high school where I had to decide what I was going to do in university. What was I going to do for my undergraduate degree? And at the time, this was a long time ago, so UX didn't really exist as a formal academic program in Toronto universities at the time. So I didn't know there was such a thing as UX. I didn't really know. So I was looking at programs like architecture. I looked at computer science, and I ultimately ended up going into computer science. It's not design per se in a tactical way, but I really enjoyed the problem solving that comes with being a developer, being a programmer. So that's what I did. And then I graduated. I started working. I worked for a couple of years as a Java developer, and I really liked it. But I think I was missing the actual tactical design component. I was really craving for that. So I think I decided, let me go back to design school for a couple of years. And then I think it was a ripe time because around then UX was emerging as more of a well-defined formal field in Toronto. So there were more jobs that were called, you know, UX designers. So after that, I decided to make the leap, and I thought, oh, I learned about this thing called UX, and I thought, this seems perfect because it's bringing together my passion in design with my interest in technology and my background in tech. So I took a leap of faith, and I had my first formal UX role was at BlackBerry at the time. And then I never looked back. I knew it was perfect for me. So.
Right now, there's a question that is so good right now for everything that you already said about your why did you start with the UX? Yeah. And Nina Rodriguez, that she's watching us here in Madrid from YouTube. YouTube. She's asking, does the MBA in design strategy was a career game change for you?
Yes, 100% it was. And I'm happy to share why. I think what had happened for me, for my journey, was I was really lucky. I had an undergraduate education in computer science, so I had the tech background. I had gone back to school for design, and I'd been working in UX, so I had the design background. But I didn't have any business skills, and I'd never been formally trained in business. It was just whatever I learned on the job. And what I found was, as I was growing in my career and I had moved into management roles and leadership positions, which I loved, I was finding that I wanted to learn those business skills because I wanted to contribute strategically in my role. Mm-hmm. Without understanding the business side, without being able to speak the same language as the business leaders in the company, I wasn't able to contribute strategically. So when I found the MBA in Design Strategy program, I thought this would be perfect because not only is it an MBA, but that specific program teaches those business skills through the lens of design thinking and innovation. So I thought this is perfect for somebody who's in UX. And the program was phenomenal. It was more than anything I'd envisioned, and it really helped me elevate my skills, and I think the impact I'm hopefully able to have at work. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I think administration is so basic right now to every single job that everyone has to take right now, because numbers literally are the key for many things, you know, and also for structure, for programming, for everything.
Exactly.
So everything that you say right now is so, so true. Another question about companies. Why, for you, why is important to have a UX department in technology companies?
Yeah. So I think having a UX department, having UX and a UX organization in a tech company is very critical, I think, for multiple reasons. I think one, from a tactical standpoint. So firstly, UX consists of so many disciplines. So we have design, UX researchers, we have UX writers, and they all work together with the other stakeholders in the company to help make sure that the products are crafted with humans in mind, right? So making sure that the products and services are usable by people, that they're grounded in user needs. And I think that really, really helps companies be more successful, because ultimately their products are more successful. And I would say not just tactically, so not just usability of the products, but also from a strategic standpoint. I think it's very important to have a UX organization in tech companies, because when a company is forming their business strategy, you know, they look at market opportunities, they look at, you know, business needs and goals, they look at technology and where tech is going. But I think it's really important in that strategy to weigh in an understanding of human needs, because otherwise the company strategy could go in a direction where it might not be addressing a real human need, and then ultimately its products can fail. So for all those reasons, I think strategically and tactically, it's really important to have UX teams in tech companies.
Okay, another question right here. And also I have to talk right now in Spanish, because there's a lot of people watching right now in Spanish and English, or like a Duolingo style. Si tienen preguntas, las pueden hacer por medio del chat que tenemos en YouTube, o si no, a través de la plataforma de KeepCoding. Cualquiera de las dos, aquí yo las estoy leyendo. Hay algunas que ya me han puesto en español, otras que me la han puesto en inglés. Así que muchísimas gracias por estarnos acompañando. Okay, next question, Rena. It was a Spanish commercial right now. Another question is, how is the labor market currently in the field of UX right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think UX as a discipline, as a field, has been growing within the industry for many years now. And I think that there is a high demand, there has been, and there still is a very high demand for UX professionals. Again, whether that's UX designers, UX researchers, prototypers, all the things. And I think it's because more and more companies are realizing the return on investment, the ROI. So if we invest in hiring UX professionals, it really pays off. And I think companies are realizing that. So I think it's a great time for UX. I think I see that continuing to grow. I think that also, not only are companies, again, realizing the tactical value that UX teams can bring, but that strategic value again. So there's even, you know, you'll see there's more and more roles coming up in the industry. So now you'll see more design strategist roles, which maybe traditionally several years ago didn't even exist. But now, as UX is really becoming a more mature discipline, some of these roles are evolving. So or you might see artificial intelligence designers, or VR or AR designers. So I think it's just growing, and there's more and more opportunity for us as UXers to make impact. So it's a good market, I think.
Talking about good market and talking about right now, is just that what's new this year about UX? Because everybody right now is asking this.
Yeah. So let's see. I think a couple of things come to mind. I think the first thing that comes to mind is sort of this shift that we're seeing as we look at what's happening in the world, and as we look at what's happening in society. This shift from being user-centric, which has always been a key fundamental part of UX. That's what it's all about, to becoming more human-centric, I think. So businesses have been on this journey to become more and more user-centric, but now, and more so than ever, it's more than just being about usability, but it's really, I think, becoming about thinking about the broader social impacts that our work has, the broader impacts that our work has on community. And so, if we look at the political arena and everything that's happening in the world, or the influence that social media has, for example, on global dynamics, I think there's just a lot where people need to trust the products that they're using, and we as designers need to think about responsibly, how do we create the right products for people? So I think that's an interesting trend that has emerged, and I think I see that aspect probably continuing to grow this year.
Mm-hmm.
Another couple of things that come to mind in terms of specific technologies or trends that are coming up, AI and machine learning are really, really huge. And as that is becoming, I think, more and more prevalent in the technology solutions that we are creating, I think that in UX, again, there's sort of this need to really think about how do we design for AI, and how do we ensure that the technologies that we're creating with AI are responsible and, again, trustworthy. So I think that's another trend. And other specific technologies, voice UI is huge, because and other things like, sorry?
Chatbot.
Yes, exactly. Chatbots, or things like Alexa and Google Home, where you're interacting with the interface with your voice alone, or chatbots, like you said, where that's complete AI, and you're giving users the perception that there's a person there when there isn't. Technologies like AR, VR, virtual reality, augmented reality, where it's a whole different paradigm for designers. So I think that's something that will probably continue to grow this year.
But all these tendencies show, or how a lot of the green side so must we have to use a tool to measure this. So this is a great question right here from Karina Rodriguez, is which are your favorite tools to prototype?
That is a great question. So some of the tools that my teams have used in the past, we used, I remember in several of my past roles, we've used InVision a lot. I think that's one of our favorites, where we can quickly prototype flows and things like that. And that's really helpful as we create prototypes for UX research, usability testing. Some of the other tools that my teams have used are Principal, Framer, and like Flinto and things like that. So, and then we even just do simple things like paper prototyping a lot. So if we're just exploring a brand new opportunity space where we have an innovation project. So actually right now at work today, we're running a design sprint, and I just stepped out of it for this webinar. But the sprint we're running it's all about innovation and vision, and we're doing a lot of prototyping on paper. So we just give people markers and we're sketching things on paper, and then we will actually test some of those sketches with users. So,
how many people are in your blog? Is a way of saying how many people are, like, you manage a lot of people in I imagine that you manage a group of people. How many are there?
Yeah, so the team I manage is actually, there's 7 of us, and we sit in
only 7.
Yeah, only 7. It's interesting at Google. So if you look at the bigger org that we sit in, there's 500 people. And then within that, there's smaller orgs. So then the next layer down, our organization has about, I think, 80 people right now. And then there's a lot of smaller teams. So it's just the way things are organized. So I have 7 people on my team right now.
That's awesome.
It's great.
Another question right here that is from our platform. Say hello to Eduardo. It's Eduardo from Spain. I would like to know which tools are the most used in companies like Google or YouTube. Thank you a lot, from the US.
Yeah, so maybe I can share some of the design tools that we use. So in past roles previously, I worked at companies where we would use Adobe Photoshop a lot, Adobe Illustrator, even Fireworks quite a bit. This was back in the day. But I think there's been a huge shift in the industry towards Sketch. So that's even at Google, that's the primary design tool that we use. We use Sketch a lot. And then we have a lot of internal tools as well as at Google, where when it comes to workflow things like where we post and share our designs and how we get feedback from other people and how people can critique our work, we do have a lot of internal tools that we use as well. But I would say Sketch is the primary design tool that our team works out of.
Talking about feedback,
Yes.
how does the end result of a product affect the different UX cultures in a company?
So,
yeah. I'm doing the huge questions right here, like, go.
Yeah. Really great. I mean, I think, so I think it's sort of a two-way relationship. So I think the culture, whether it's within the company or external to the company, obviously has a huge influence on the design work that we do. So whether it's the design process or it's some of the, when we research and we look at things like human trends, behavioral trends, user needs, obviously culture permeates all of that. And so it has a very big impact on the way we do our work and the specific product solutions that we design. And then I think once we create a product or a solution and we launch it and we release it, that ultimately does impact broader. For example, I was talking about social impacts and things like that. And I'll say, working at YouTube, I'm very conscious of that. When I started working on the YouTube experience, I thought, again, like, the work that we're doing, it's impacting billions of users worldwide. And that's exciting, but it's also a little bit scary. And there's
as a responsibility.
Yeah, there's responsibility. You want to make sure that not only are you creating good sound design solutions, but that your work is garnering trust, and you're doing the right thing for people. So we know that the work that we do will have impacts. We look at other tools like social media tools. There's such a huge cultural impact that those tools have. So across the world, and then it all kind of comes back into the company as well. So I see it as like sort of a cycle, two-way relationship.
Question from Jesus. He says, what do you recommend for keeping up to date with all the technological changes that are happening right now? Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I know it's something that all of us in the industry, in the tech industry, in the design industry, it's a challenge, an exciting challenge, but it's definitely something that we all think about. How do we stay in touch? I think my biggest way of staying in touch with the latest technologies and trends is talking to people. And I think we're really, again, blessed that we have such a fantastic design community in Silicon Valley. But I think anywhere you go, I've seen the same in Toronto and other places where I've worked. There are so many talented people in tech and in design. And I think I get a lot of my inspiration, and I'm able to stay in touch with new trends and technologies by talking to others, going to meetups, talking to other people. Sometimes I'll meet up with colleagues and we'll just start talking about some specific design problem, and we'll start talking about new technologies and things like that. So people, I think humans are the biggest way for me personally.
Talking about humans and all the people that you know about this industry, I want to know more about the women in tech. Silicon Valley has a lot of women working in tech. How you feel to be part of it? And what do you think? We need more women in tech, obviously? Yes? No? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think for me, it has been a very empowering experience being a woman in tech. I think that we've seen growth and shifts in the industry. I think nowadays there are more and more women in tech, and that's really, really exciting to see. I know when I was in undergrad and I was in my computer science program, we had 300 people in the program, and only I think 8 to 10 of them maybe were women. And that's changing. So that was many years ago, and I think more and more women are in tech and in design these days, which is great. I think that I have many times worked in environments where women were a minority, or there were other minorities. So maybe not women, but other minorities. And I think for me, it's been a journey to find my voice. So regardless of the environment that I'm in, whether I'm a minority or not, how do I feel comfortable being my authentic self, voicing my opinions? I think I'm getting better at it every day, and I think it'll be a lifelong journey. But I'm personally really passionate about helping others too. So I try all the time to meet with other women in tech who are maybe like earlier in their careers or other minorities to see if I can give back and help others find their voices too, because I think that's so important. But yeah, I mean, it's been great being a woman in tech.
Talking about your influences, tell us more about it.
Yeah. I'm really lucky. I'll share my leadership influences first. I mean, I think I feel so lucky that I've had the opportunity to work with some very strong leaders. And actually, it's kind of on the topic of women in tech. I've been so lucky. I've worked for some really strong female leaders. So whether it was early on in my career when I was in Canada, or more recently since I've moved to California, just strong leaders that are inspiring, people that I've admired. And I feel like when I grow up, I want to be like them. And so a lot of inspiration there. I've stayed in touch with each and every one of these leaders, and I'm grateful. Like, you know, people are very generous when you reach out to them. They'll extend themselves in a mentorship capacity. So that's been a huge inspiration for me. Lots of great managers early in my career. And then from a design influence standpoint, I would say personally, I'm really excited by companies that put a lot of thought into their end-to-end customer experience. So for example, a company that I love, this is a hotel brand, hospitality brand, it's Ritz-Carlton. I love their brand because they put so much detail into designing the end-to-end experience, every touch point that a customer has with their brand, whether you call their reservations line or whether you go and enter their hotel. So when there's a lot of detail into the whole customer experience, I really appreciate that, and I'm inspired and influenced by those brands very much.
Do you have like a books that you can recommend, and we can like share the names of the books on our YouTube channel so everybody can see it, and also we can put it on our platform that we can search and buy it?
I would be more than happy to. Why don't I send you a list of books that I'm reading right now, and I'll send you a list of books that are on my list to read because I'm really excited about it. And I will send that to you offline, and more than happy to share that.
Share is happiness all the time.
Yes, I completely very much sharing.
Let's see, talking about UX. Here's a question. What qualities, because you were talking about these hotels, so this is a great question for that. Which qualities does a person need to have in the field of UX? For all the people that right now watching this webinar, they don't know how to become one. So which qualities they need to become one?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think I would say a combination, a balance of hard skills and soft skills. So in terms of hard skills, there's definitely the core design chops. I think people who are obsessed with detail and excellence in their designs, that's always really great to see. The other thing I think from a hard skill standpoint is the ability to think and work at different altitudes. So sometimes you need to zoom in, sometimes you need to zoom out, sometimes you need to think of a very complicated, detailed design problem, and other times you need to think at a very high altitude and think of a big picture or a vision that you're trying to articulate. So that's another good one. But I would say beyond just the hard skills, there's the soft skills that I think are so important for UX. So an innate curiosity. I think people who always ask the question why. So whatever the design problem is, why? Wanting to understand humans, wanting to understand human behavior, wanting to understand businesses and how businesses operate and what business goals are. I think we were saying like that's so important because that's the context we operate in. Other soft skills like communication, problem solving, all those things. But I would say the other thing that I think is super important in UX, and I think in general, no matter what field you're in, is authenticity and courage. And it's hard to be vulnerable sometimes, but I think that we all need to have the courage to speak up. And, you know, especially in UX, sometimes you're the only one in the room advocating for something. And how do we be comfortable with that and sort of connect with other stakeholders and rally everyone around a collective goal? So just a long list of things, but just some ideas.
Rena, one of the things that we should add to that list is cognitive psychology.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's a big part of understanding humans, 100%.
Okay. Hannah, that's your answer. I think it's Hannah. I know. Well, someone calls me. Me ask you that question. So okay. Answer already. Okay. People remember that if you want to ask something to Rena or comment something on our YouTube chat. I'm reading all the things that everybody is writing. Thank you so much for joining us. And I have another question right here. I think Hector Canedo. Yeah, I think Rena already answered you with the what's the main core or main important thing to start working with US methodology. I think where you talk about the psychology and to study the human being, I think it should be that the answer or something else that I'm like missing around right now.
No, sorry, was the question around methodology or what was it? Sorry?
The question was, what do you think is the main core or main important thing to start working with UX methodology?
I see. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Maya. I think that's the big kind of underlying thing. It's understanding humans. And I would say that then when you kind of get into an actual initiative and you're thinking about design methodology or the end-to-end design process, I think it really depends on the project that you're working on, but as much as possible and as much as makes sense, starting up front really broad, asking those questions, asking why, and framing the design problem well, and then sort of converging from there. So then iterating on various concepts, ideas, and I think we all know like this is kind of standard design process and converging through research and testing. So I hope that helps. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, Hector, that's your answer. And Dianel Undaneta, he is asking a good question, actually. He says, what is the methodology that best results has given you the best result? For example, Lean UX, Scrum, Design Sprint, etc., and why?
So which methodology has given the best results for design sprints and things like that?
Yes.
That's a great question. So it's really interesting. I think since starting at Google, what's been great is I've been exposed to and immersed in a lot of the Google-specific methodology. So Google has a very specific, unique sprint process, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So for example, the sprint we're running today, we're following that sprint methodology. And I love it, and it's been great. Now, before I joined Google, you know, I worked at other companies and we would many times have sprints or, you know, we'd call them workshops or things like that, where we'd have multiple stakeholders coming together. And we didn't always use the Google sprint method. Sometimes we were kind of creative and we came up with our own method. We would maybe draw from Google's methods. Like there's an activity called Crazy Eights, which is, for example, really good for idea generation. So I've used that in the past, even when I wasn't at Google. But I found that really a lot of times it would be about customizing the method. So depending on the workshop we were trying to run or is it a vision sprint or is it kind of a more focused design problem? And then we would craft certain activities that would help us kind of get to that end goal.
Another question that my boss sent me is this: how to solve the rush between the needs of engineers and the UX experts? How must win in case of this conflict?
Yeah, so that is a very, very good question. And I know it's a very common theme in the industry everywhere, right? There's this tension, but I think it's a healthy tension. And I think it's the nature of our jobs, right? For UX, a lot of times we can move fast, but it's nice to have more time because we can do a little bit more research and thinking. And then with engineering, there's definitely sort of a tendency to need to move quickly and start building things and shipping things. So I think that it's hard to say, who wins in this kind of scenario, I think that tension has to be there, because I think that without that tension, UX might be just taking too long with things, and we need that pull, that kind of dialogue with engineering to say, okay, how do we actually make this a reality? And then I think that pull from the UX side is probably good for engineering, because it's like, hey, wait, let's think about this from a human standpoint. So I think there's like no winner, but I think it's more about how we work together, and I think that tension is good.
Talking about tension,
yes.
This is a great question, actually. Nelly says, hi, I want to ask you, what's the biggest problem in your job and how you resolve it?
That's a good question. Oh my
God, everybody's sending Gina so great questions. Thank you so much for joining us, really. Thank you.
Keeping me on my toes.
Tell us.
So I will share. So one of the biggest challenges that I've had, especially since joining Google, because it is such a big company, was adjusting to, again, the scale of things here. So because it's such a big company, and it's very fast paced, it's really exciting. We move very quickly and I love it, but it was a bit of an adjustment for me, because it was like, okay, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of stakeholders, there's a lot of process, and in spite of all of that, we were moving very fast. So I would say it has been and it continues to be the biggest point of challenge in my role. And I think it's the biggest thing that I always tell myself, to be successful in my role, I need to be able to balance that. So how do I stay on top of all the information and all the stakeholders, but still move quickly? I would say, there's, tactically, there's a lot of techniques that I'm learning, just how to simple.
Which are? Tell us some techniques that you're applying.
So it'd be something simple as like, I have 3,000 unread emails in my inbox right now. I'm not kidding. I could show you.
And
there's a lot of it is mindset for me. So previously, my mindset would have been, I need to get to inbox 0. I need to resolve all of that. I need to get through all these things. But it's getting comfortable with selectively tackling the high priority things. So how do you really figure out what are the top 2 or 3 areas where I can add most impact, and really focusing on those things? So that, I would say, is one very tactical technique that has been useful for me. I think relationships are huge. So that really helps, because as we are trying to move quickly and stay aligned with everyone, staying on the same page with other people has been important. So that's a technique I use. I have a lot of one-on-ones. I have a lot of meetings in my calendar, but it's so important to build relationships with people. So just some of the things.
That's important. So important. Yeah. Talking about relationships, there's a question right here. What's the pros do you think a UX designer has when, okay, it's just that it's a huge question right now. Yes. Okay. Renas is asking, what's the pros do you think a UX designer has when coming from the field of marketing? Good question.
That is a really good question. So let's see, I would say when I worked at Citrix for quite a few years, and I was really lucky because we had a fantastic marketing team, and we had a lot of projects where we got to work with marketing folks directly. And I can share, there were quite a few things that I always thought, oh, I'm so glad that someone with a marketing background is in this discussion. Especially we were working on e-commerce flows and things like that. And the marketing team had a really good pulse on who are we targeting? Why are we targeting them? What's the best way to reach our target audience? How do we get them interested in our products and services, and really get the people who are most interested? And how do we deliver value to them so that they can learn about our products, and if they're interested, they can ultimately easily buy them and try them? And so that whole funnel, the marketing funnel, I think it was somebody with a marketing background coming to UX, I think would have that perspective. I'll share too, right now for YouTube, I work on the YouTube ads experience. So all the ads that you see when you use YouTube. Those are the ads that keep YouTube free, and that's what generates revenue for the company. That's what my team designs the experience around those ads. So again, another example of if you have a marketing background and you're coming to UX, that is so valuable for something like that, because I didn't have a marketing background and I didn't have an advertising background, so I've been learning. But people who do, I think you can really add valuable insight to the UX field and to roles like this.
Talking about Google and in Google Ads, there's a question right here that says, I would like to know if web design trends are conditioned a bit by the positioning algorithms of Google, or on the contrary, the future trends that come are the consequence of fashion and what the UX user is asking for.
So I just want to make sure I understand the question correctly. Is it about, so he's
talking about web design trends. If this is conditioned by the position algorithms that Google on Google Ads, if Seneca when Google search is on the web, you know.
I see. Yeah. Okay, I think I understand. So I would say, you know, without being able to speak to the specifics of the actual algorithms themselves, because quite honestly, I will not pretend I'm not familiar with the intricate details, but speaking kind of at a holistic level, I think that I would say absolutely there has to be some influence, because any Google products, whether it's ads or search or, you know, I'll use those since they were referenced in the question. They have such broad reach. There's so many people that are impacted by those experiences and those products of Google. There's so many people that use them, billions of people that use these things every day. So I think it absolutely has to have an impact on web design trends, user behaviors in terms of how people use the web. And so I would say absolutely yes, without knowing the specifics of any algorithms, but I would say I think so. It makes sense.
Another question right here. Thank you, everyone. Seriously, to asking the good questions in this webinar. We're so happy about it. And there's a question right here. Could you tell us something about testing products? How long do you spend? And if the person that tests your applications are inside of the company or outside the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, as UXers, any UXer is a huge advocate of testing and user research. And so in an ideal world, I think it depends on the project, but in an ideal world, we want to spend as much time as possible testing. I mean, I think there's a sweet spot. I think that eventually you just want to launch. But yeah, I think qualitative research, quantitative research, as much due diligence that we could do from a usability standpoint before we go live is always great. Any kind of upfront research that we can do is also good, where we may not be testing a particular design solution, but we're doing upfront research like ethnography, talking to our users to understand their underlying needs, always helpful. But I think it depends. There's reality. You know, we don't always have time to do as much research as we'd like to. Sometimes we have to move really quickly, and that's okay. I think sometimes we can learn after we launch. So sometimes what we do, I've done with my teams in the past, is if we didn't have time to do UX research and testing before the launch, we'll do as much as we can, and then we'll launch it. And then we'll either do some follow-up UX research after launch. So we'll talk to customers who started using our new product and see how the journey has been for them. Or we will look at data and metrics of how people are using our products. At Google, definitely, very data-driven company, very metrics-driven, and it's very much an experimentation culture. So we do, again, as much research as we can, but then we launch and we very much look at, hey, we're running this experiment, what are we seeing in the data? So, and to answer the second part, yeah, I think we talk to, obviously we get feedback from internal employees at the company, but I think it's very, very critical to actually get feedback from external actual users and customers. So as a UX team, we're always striving to do that.
Talking about things that you are involved in Google and YouTube, there is a question right here that get my attention. Jose Luis Sanchez Espada, he says, did you currently work with prototypes for voice devices such as Google Home, Alexa? Could you tell us about some tool to prototype with voice if it exists?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So to be entirely honest, I'm not personally that deeply involved in designing voice solutions and prototyping them right now. So off the top of my head, I can't think of any voice prototyping suggestions. However, I'm more than happy to ask some of my colleagues offline and then share that information with you. But I will say that in general, we do we do work very collaboratively across the different divisions and groups at Google. So there are teams, the Google Home team, we're the YouTube ads team, whatever, and we definitely collaborate and try to connect the dots across the groups. But yeah, happy to share any insight I can get later on voice prototyping tools.
So can you, right now, we only have 15 minutes left for this interview. Can you remind us which are the UX trends in 2019, so everybody catch up everything that asked you before, because some people are connecting right now, so we can remind them which are the tendencies of UX in this year.
Yeah, so I think some of the things we were talking about before were in terms of specific technologies or trends. We talked about artificial intelligence, machine learning was very top of mind for me because I know that's continuing to grow as a technology trend. And I think for UX designers, it's becoming more and more important to think about how do we design for that world and how do we design responsibly for that. So that was one. We did talk about voice and voice interfaces being a big upcoming technology, things like augmented reality, virtual reality. So how do designers craft experiences for those paradigms? And then I think the other thing we were chatting about was sort of the broader trend of UX not just being about being user-centric, but being human-centric. I think that's something that I'm personally really passionate about. It's not just about designing usable solutions, but doing the right thing for humans. Like, firstly, are we solving a real human need? So that's ultimately what's going to help our products and our businesses be successful, and we're doing the right thing for people. So how do people trust our products? And there's a lot of issues right now. We were saying about data privacy and the impact that social media has and all that. So I think there's the responsibility piece was something that we said for 2019 and beyond will probably be growing.
My Hasabadak, great name, love it.
Yeah.
It says, if you have to hire for your team, what are some questions you will ask, or characteristics that you would look to find in the candidate?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think, and I would say this is maybe related to something else we were talking about earlier too. I think there's sort of obviously the technical skills, making sure that someone is well-versed and comfortable with all the core design fundamentals, design process, being user-centric in their thinking, and their design chops are solid. And I think for me, though, a big part of it is the soft skills. Definitely, it always has been. My very first manager, when I had my first manager and I first started helping him interview people, he said to me, he's like, the most important thing about candidates and someone you will hire to join you on the team, it's their personality and it's their attitude and it's how they approach things, because you can always learn technical skills. So that's stuck with me, and it's really something that I look for, someone who is curious, wants to deeply understand people, someone who is collaborative, someone who will stop, ask why, someone who's not afraid to jump in, get their hands dirty, help other people, like all the soft skills. At Google, we call it being googly. Some of you may have heard of this term out externally, and it's a funny word, but we call it being googly. So at Google, when we interview people to join the company, we really look for people that are going to stand for the right thing. And it's about not doing evil and always doing good and all that. So that's definitely a huge focus.
So let's Googling. We have to every day. Let's Googling. Another question from from Carlos Marchena. I say, hi, congrats for the world record. Thank you. Woohoo! My question is, we are transitioning it from graphic user interface to user interface. Your recommendation as a user to increase adoption and usability?
Could you possibly repeat the question for me? The first part of the question.
Sorry. We are transitioning from the graphic user interface to voice user interface, right?
Okay.
So your recommendation as a user to increase adoption and usability is?
To increase adoption and usability as we move to more of a voice-centric world. Yeah, so I am happy to share some thoughts, and again, caveating with I haven't been as deeply immersed in the voice world yet, but I'll share my initial thoughts. I mean, I think that when you move to a world where it's primarily voice UI, right? As designers, I think we need to think about the fact that there's no visual aid many times. So thinking about, for example, Google Home or Alexa, there's no visual aid. So, traditionally as UX designers, we're very reliant on visual affordances to help support our designs, help make them easy to understand. We can use labels on buttons and animations and motion design to help our users understand how we want them to interface with our system. And I think when we go to a voice world, we lose that ability to depend on a visual cue. So now you have to, I think it's more challenging in many ways, and I think it's an exciting challenge, but how do you help users understand how do you interact? What are the voice commands? What do you say? How do you converse with this voice UI? I think you have to, as a designer, think about, I no longer have a visual support to communicate with my users. So I think it's a very interesting challenge, and I'm really excited to see where voice UI goes, definitely.
Okay, 2 questions and we're finished. So this is a great question from Eduardo. Okay, I have to put my screen up. Do you know Interaction Design Foundation and Don Norman? What is your opinion about this organization? Do you think it's a good choice to learn?
Is it Nielsen Norman? Is that what they said?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I have never, I've looked into a lot of their programs and a lot of their certifications. I have a lot of respect for that organization. I have a lot of colleagues who've been more deeply involved with that org. And I mean, I think they're just so highly regarded in the industry. So from what I know and from what I've heard, I would definitely say, yeah, absolutely.
And the last question is and about books that we were talking before.
Yeah.
Did you read Don't Make Me Think from Krug? If you didn't, you'd have to put it on your list.
So I have not, and it is absolutely on my list.
It's a must book from a UX design.
Yeah, 100%. It's actually ridiculous that I haven't read it yet. It's been on my list for so long. So thank you for reinforcing that. It is a must read for me, and I will. Yeah, thank you.
This is a book about, some people don't know of. So tell me more about this book.
So I would love to hear. I was going to say, is it possible to pose a question back to the person who said this?
I think it's a must, said Mirna.
I'd like to hear from them because I haven't read it. What was their biggest takeaway? What was their biggest insight? If you don't mind sharing in the chat.
Yeah, please tell us what the book is about, because we want to learn more and we can share with the whole people that are watching right now. So Rena, for me, it's a huge honor to meet you. What I told you before, it's a dream come true to meet you and to see more about how do you implement a lot of things in Google and YouTube. A lot of designers and UX designers, a lot of people are watching this. And thank you so much for your time. And please, we have like two things that we need from you. One is the list of the books that you tell us more.
Yes,
and two, how we can follow you up. you have social media, how we can like follow all your steps that you're doing in Google and YouTube.
Yes, absolutely. So I will definitely share a book list with you offline, and happy to share with the group here. And I am always very excited to stay connected and stay in touch. Twitter's a great way to stay in touch with me. My Twitter handle is just Rena Merchant, all one word. So please look me up. I would love to connect. So message me, either DM me or tweet, and we can stay connected. I am so grateful. Thank you for having me. I was telling Mai earlier before this chat, this is my first time interfacing with the tech and design community in Spain and beyond. I know this is a global event, but I'm very, very excited to have had the opportunity to chat with you all. I hope we can stay in touch, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Your last advice for every one of us.
Be your authentic self. I mentioned I'm on this journey and I'm a big advocate for it. Don't be afraid, be courageous, if you just be vulnerable, be fully, completely yourself. And I would say that is my biggest piece of advice for everyone these days, and including myself.
So don't stop the bottom right now. I have to chat with you because I have to stop this broadcast. So I have to say goodbye to everyone. So I have to stop in Spanish. So I'm sorry.
No problem. Goodbye, everybody.
Okay. Don't say goodbye right now to me. Chicos, un gusto, un honor, un privilegio como siempre. Estos webinars siguen y siguen y siguen. Hay otro más que vamos a tener ahorita muy pronto. Vamos a estar hablando de IoT, por si no saben qué es eso. Bueno, pues dentro de muy poco vamos a tener este webinar. Pueden conocer un poquito más a través de Eventbrite y también más eventos. Después de haber batido el récord Guinness de la clase de software más grande del mundo, agradecemos mucho a todas las personas que nos acompañaron. La verdad que fue un eventazo y un sueño hecho realidad para muchos. Otro evento que nos pueden acompañar, que muy pronto esta semana seguramente lo van a ver por Eventbrite, es que vamos a hablar de ser o no ser un CTO. Esa es la cuestión con los amigos de Demian Startups. Así que les mando un fuerte abrazote, descansen y muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Este webinar va a estar en nuestra plataforma para que nuevamente le den play y nos vean, y también todas las preguntas que tengan, obviamente los libros y demás, lo voy a poner a través del chat de YouTube. Jesús, Minda y toda la gente, muchas gracias. Feliz noche. Chao.